and we're happy to be here today to kick off this conversation with what's called a check-in exercise, or otherwise referred to as an icebreaker. So, for those of you who are not sitting at one of our tables, we would love for you to join us. We have 6 empty seats here, 4 here, 5 there. It'd be great if folks could move up and join the table. You're welcome at any time. We have, so you are aware, 1 volunteer facilitator or 2 at each of our tables, and they're here to make sure this conversation goes well and smoothly. This is only a very small piece at the beginning of the meeting, and the purpose of the check-in exercise is to give everyone an opportunity to speak, to introduce themselves, and to begin to develop small bits of a relationship with some other folks in our community. So many times we come into meetings and we see a presentation and we do question and answer, and we don't get to know the person beside us. So we're going to try to do just a little bit of that today. There are 3 questions we would like each person to answer. Now, it's going to have to be quick, because even at the table, if there are 10 people, the time adds up. The 3 questions are, number 1, what is your name? Number 2, why did you accept the invitation to be here this evening? And the 3rd question is, what is your connection to homelessness or the Hyde Park neighborhood? We have tremendous challenges in our community, and we're working together to address them. Let's start with the conversation right now. Thank you all.
To do this icebreaker as a group, so everyone in the room could get to know each other anyway. So thank goodness that we had that planned. We can now formally start the meeting.
So first off, good evening. My name is Raul Perales. I'm the council representative here in District 3, and really happy to be here with all of you. And thank you to our community members who came out today. Really important to have you as part of this dialogue. I want to say thank you as well to Path for being willing to have now this next meeting, and I wouldn't say just second, it's a second large community meeting, but I know that Path has been out, and Megan especially, connecting individually with maybe a number of you out here in the community as well. So a lot of meetings have transpired since the first meeting, and these are not mandatory or required meetings by the city. Like it or not, we have sometimes a fairly easy process to be able to get through with different development projects. But when there are projects like this that can be received by the community either poorly or positively, but especially when we know there are projects like permanent supportive housing. For me, it's important that we do have the community involved, and so it's one thing that I ask of our partners, that they make sure that they go out and they engage robustly with our community, and so that's what today's about. Even though this is not a required mandatory meeting, it is important that we have feedback from the community. And so we thank you for being here to participate. And I do want to sort of set a little bit of a tone, because I know that not everybody in here is showing up today and saying, we love this, let's build this tomorrow, right? There's a lot of concerned community members here that live right here, that have lived here for a long time in the community, and you probably have a lot of questions, and we're hoping we'll be able to answer those questions and concerns tonight. But at least, and I thank you for the icebreaker, at least what I want everybody to understand, we're all community members here. We're all living here, a lot of us, for a long time in this city. We all recognize the issue that we have with homelessness, and it's growing. at an alarming rate. Just over the last couple of years, nearly 2,000 of an increase in homeless in our city. And we see almost half of those right here in District 3. And so we see that issue. And I know if you're a community member here in San Jose, there's no way you have not seen that issue growing in our city. So we know we need to address it. And these are the permanent solutions, permanent supportive housing. We're going to need a lot more of these all throughout the entire city. And so it's going to be important that we engage with community, that we understand what it is that we're really trying to do here, who we're housing, how they work, and that we're able to answer concerns, questions from individuals in our community. But I hope you understand that people sitting across from you, people in the room with you, these are neighbors. And so whether you're coming with some anxieties, and you want some questions and you're concerned, or if you're a big supporter of it and you're saying, no, I want to move forward, I hope you can respect one another tonight. Respect the speakers that'll be here. We can answer the questions. I will be here the whole evening. And so as well, if you want to engage with me to be able to answer concerns as well, we will be here. That's what tonight is about, hopefully to answer your concerns, your questions. And thank you again, Pat, for hosting tonight's meeting. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan Colbart from Pat.
Thank you, Councilmember. My name is Megan Colbart. I'm the Regional Director here in PATH San Jose. I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. Over the past 4 months, I have met with many of you. And for those of you that have shared your real concerns about this project, I want to thank you for your willingness to speak your mind and to share your concerns in a respectful and powerful way. I hope that tonight you feel heard, and I hope that you can see how and where we have responded to your feedback. I recognize it takes some courage to show up in a room where you might expect that people have some different views than your own, and it's not always comfortable. But I want to acknowledge that despite perhaps some differences, I think we all share one thing in common. Whether you're housed or unhoused in this room tonight, whether you're a supporter or you're a skeptic, whether you're a new member of Hyde Park or whether you've been a neighbor for many, many years, for some even decades, I think we can all agree that we all want increased quality of life in our neighborhoods, and we all want a safe place to call our home. So thank you once again. A few house rules. After audio trouble, this seems very simple, but the bathrooms. The men's restroom is upstairs, the women's restroom is downstairs. And I want to move into the many ways that we hope to answer your questions tonight. Again, we want everyone to feel heard. So we've decided that we're going to answer your questions in 4 ways. We're going to do a Q&A session with a panel. So if you have a question, you will find on your table a speaker card. If you don't see one right at your placing, please raise your hand and we'll get one to you quickly. So after a short presentation, we'll have a Q&A session. During the presentation, we ask that you write down your questions, because following the presentations, the facilitators will collect these questions and direct them towards the panel here tonight. We also understand that naturally when these questions are being asked, I will shuffle them. I'll have a member of the audience shuffle these cards. I'm going to take the top 15. Some feedback that we got from last meeting was that we might have sorted them ourselves and kind of went through the questions we wanted. So I want to make it very clear to everybody that somebody will shuffle them. I'm happy to talk to the people who I know might not be in complete support of this project and have them shuffle them. But we will take the top 15. And we ask that when we're asking these questions off the comment cards, that we don't try to naturally, I think when you hear a question, you're like, that made me think of something else. So we won't be answering shout outs. Out of respect for everyone in the room, we generally will be taking just the questions off the cards. Following the Q&A, we'll then have an open house and breakout. And we're hoping that here you'll be able to go directly to the representatives on the panel, ask your questions, and have in-depth discussions with people. That's another way that we hope to answer your questions tonight. 3, at each table you'll find an FAQ document. There's 30 to 40 questions that we've collected from you over the past 4 months, and we've done our very best to answer them in written form. This is also available on our website, which is listed on the FAQ. And lastly, if for some reason through those 4 main ways you still don't get your questions answered tonight, please fill out your contact information on each speaker card. I will personally call all of you this week and follow up if we have not answered your speaker card, and I'll have a conversation with you to make sure that you feel heard and that we really get your questions answered tonight, okay? So with that, I'm going to kick off the presentation and I'm going to welcome Bob from Destination Home. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Megan. It's Bob again. I'm going to be very brief. As part of Destination Home's work to go out in the community and answer questions and engage people in our common solution to end homelessness throughout the county, I want to talk about the regional perspective a little bit. The first slide here, you'll see numbers for each of our cities throughout the county and a little number that means per 1,000 total residents. The point of this slide is not one city. It's not to say the problem is super bad in Milpitas or in Sunnyvale or in San Jose. It's quite the opposite. It's to make sure that we all recognize that homelessness is an issue throughout our entire community, and we're only going to address it if we all work on it together, and that is across the entire county. Now, very briefly, on the next slide, a little bit about diversity in the population of those experiencing homelessness. Now, in my previous job, I lived sort of close to downtown here in San Jose, and I walked 10 or 15 minutes to work, and I saw 15 or 20 different folks experiencing homelessness every single morning and every single afternoon on my way back home. And I didn't see any families with children. Yet 15% of those experiencing homelessness in our community are families with children. I certainly couldn't tell who had been a victim of domestic violence. I didn't know who was a veteran. I didn't know who had suffered a job loss or eviction. The point is that the diversity among the population is not that one part of town where you see one individual or a group of individuals. It's much broader than that. A number that jumps out to me a lot is this 41%. I sort of felt like the folks that I saw had been homeless forever. And we do have some in our community who have been chronically homeless for multiple years or multiple instances. But 41% are homeless for the first time. And more than 80% of those who are experiencing homelessness in our community lived in a home here before experiencing homelessness. So just broaden our perspective a little bit about who we're talking about. The next slide is going to take us to some of the progress, right? It's really important to look at what we've been able to achieve as a community. In 2015, we had fewer than 400 homes with supportive housing opportunity in the entire county. Now, including those that are underway and under construction, we have surpassed 3,000. Now that is a tremendous achievement for this community, from the cities and the county and the nonprofit affordable housing developers and service providers and our community members who've been a part of that. So we should really look at that progress as pushing us toward the goal and moving forward. And then finally, I want to talk very briefly about geographic diversity. You'll see on this map that each one of those little homes is where we have supportive housing in the county. And thus far, we have more than 55 housing developments, so apartment buildings, with supportive housing in them in 10 of our 15 cities. And that's pretty good diversity. The little blue box refers only to the county housing bond, and it has funded 19 of those, new construction, and those are in 6 different cities. So we're moving forward across the county and always working to increase diversity in terms of geographic representation so that we're all working on this together. Thank you all very much, and I'll hand it back to Joel.
Hello, my name is Joel Roberts, and I'm the CEO of PATH and PATH Ventures. PATH is a agency that helps people who are homeless with services and street outreach, and PATH Ventures is a housing development agency. And I just briefly wanted to share with you who we are, since we are the ones who are developing this development. We are currently building and are almost finished with Villas on the Park, which is near St. James Park in downtown San Jose. It's 83 units, and we went through the same process in the community in downtown as we are doing here. We also work in 140 cities throughout the state of California, and we have more than 40 developments or physical programs around the state. I just want to share with you what our values are. In the old days, homeless shelters and homeless programs would just set up a building in a neighborhood and just do whatever they can to help people and kind of ignored the neighborhood. And about 10 years ago, we realized that those types of agencies are not doing it correctly. That if you're really going to make an impact in addressing homelessness, you not only have to help the people who are homeless, but you have to help the neighborhood where you're placing programs and services and buildings, make sure their quality of life is good as well. So we basically made a commitment that it would be a win-win. It would be a win for people who are living on the streets, but also a win for the neighborhood. That means listening to the neighborhood, when we build buildings, to talk about design, and who should go in the building, and how we run the building. It means making sure the buildings look good, that they're not just a stucco box, or they look like a housing project in the 1960s. It's something that makes the neighborhood look good. We also believe in this concept of geographic-based programs. And what that basically means is that we are committed to the geography around our building. That means we're not just a developer that's going to build a building, get it going, and then move on to the next building. We're actually going to be committed to the geography around our building. That could mean street outreach. It could mean creating a hotline where people see encampments or people living on the streets, they call the hotline, and we either get the city or the county or our own teams or other agency outreach teams to go and encounter people and help them who are living around our buildings. Again, it's about geography and not just about the building. The third is that what we've really tried to do is create a model. That we don't want to create a building or a program where everyone says that was a failure and it ruined our neighborhood. We want it to be something where it's a model that other neighborhoods would do the same. And that's why we've done over 40 programs in buildings around the state. As I shared before, it's about outreach, but you can't have outreach without housing. So if we build housing, we want to make sure we have some sort of outreach. Whether it's like in downtown, where we have a team that specifically is committed to downtown, or if it's in other areas outside the region, we'll have kind of a region-wide team that will be on call to help people. In the old days, outreach was hand a sandwich to someone and say, do you need some help? And when they say they don't, they move on. In the new days, when it comes to outreach, it's integrated. It's about healthcare and mental health. It's about actually providing case management services on the streets and not just in a building. It's much more integrated. And in some cities, we work with law enforcement. In other cities, we work with business improvement districts just to make sure that it's not the old kind of hand a sandwich out and wish people good luck on the streets. It's actually clinical support for people on the streets. And finally, it's about housing first. And what that means is, again, the old days, build a shelter, and the city or the neighborhood thinks they're done with helping people who are homeless. We know, and the experts know around the country, as well as around the state, that the only way to solve homelessness is to help build homes for people who don't have homes and surround them with services so they stay in those homes. And in many smaller cities around the country, when they really make a commitment to this housing first, their numbers go down. In the bigger cities, like in California, it's going to take a lot longer to do this, but we know that we can't just build a shelter. We have to build housing, and we can't just push people around all over the state. We have to make sure that if they're homeless in our neighborhoods, we've got to build homes for them, and that's what this is about. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alison Riley. I'm Managing Director of Real Estate Development for Path Ventures. And Path created Path Ventures in 2007 to support its mission of ending homelessness by creating additional supply of affordable and supportive housing. Since 2007, we've built over 700 units in 13 developments throughout the state. And we have over 500 units currently in our pipeline. We serve families, veterans, seniors, people with disabilities. We serve a variety of folks in our communities. Sorry, we had a video of one of our clients to share with you all, but because of our AV challenges, we will not be able to share that with you. But we wanted to share some more about this project, right? So 1020 North 4th Street at the corner of 4th and Younger. This site has been vacant for quite some time and was on the market for sale, and we entered into a purchase and sale agreement and are planning to purchase the site this week. We have been incorporating your feedback from the last meeting, from your conversations with Megan, and we hope that you will see that feedback incorporated into our design. We're working on finalizing the financing strategy. These things shift as the regulations change, and we hope to put all of the financing together in the next 6 to 9 months. We're working through the entitlement process, and we're continuing the conversation with you all, of course.
All right, here's the fun part. This is what we've heard from you. We've heard loud and clear that from the neighborhood leaders that they were concerned about the population. Obviously, we are an organization committed to ending homelessness, but we will continue to serve people who are formerly homeless, but we've switched the population. We will now be serving seniors, and we've heard that loud and clear from community members. So we did change the population. We will be serving formerly homeless seniors, 55 and older. We heard that security was really needed on site, so we will now be offering security at the development. Parking is needed on site. We've increased the parking. Larger space for retail is desired. We heard loud and clear in the first community meeting. I think we had 500 square feet of commercial in the initial design. We now have close to 3,000, actually maybe a little bit over 3,000. Incorporating architecture that is engaging the neighborhood and is compatible with the existing community. Our architect is here. He is in the back left corner, and we would love for you during the breakout session to please speak with the architect and please give us your comments. It's very important that we create buildings that feel good to the neighborhood, and we're in the very beginning stages, so this is really the time that we'd love to hear from you. Next slide. We have someone behind the screen that seems to be magically knowing exactly when to turn the slide, so this is pretty miraculous. What we have changed, as we discussed, we will now limit the occupancy to seniors. On-site staffing will include, we'll actually go into the full staffing structure. It's quite a few people. 93 units with a 2-bedroom manager. We've limited the height now to 4 stories. We had a 5th story scenario in our first meeting, so we've reduced the height of the building as well in response to your feedback. As I said, we increased the retail space, we've increased the parking, and we've added ground floor patios and balconies. Again, this is the time where we want to continue to hear from you. Our work is not done, and hopefully our work together is not done. So I think that finalizes the presentation. So we were going to take a 5-minute break. Let's take about a 2-minute break. During this time, let's take a 3-minute break so everyone can get some water. The facilitators right now will be collecting your question cards, and we're going to move straight into the Q&A with a panel. Thank you all so much. We're about to shuffle the cards and take the first 15. So if everyone can get them up to me, that would be wonderful. Okay, is that everybody? All right. Okay, so we're now going to move formally into the Q&A session. We can just get everybody's attention. Can I have one volunteer to shuffle the cards without looking at them? Anybody? I don't see anybody. Okay. All right, somebody shuffle. Okay, great. Thank you. It's quite the shuffle. Yeah, thank you so much. And again, if your question is not selected, we have 5 tables at the back, each staffed by the panelists here, so feel free to go directly to your panelist. I'm about to introduce them now. So we have Ray Bramson, he's the Chief Innovations Officer for Destination Home. Thank you, Ray, for being here. We have Warren Reed, who represents our property management company, John Stewart. Thank you, Warren, for being here. Warren will be at a back table. Both Warren and Ray will be at the back left table. You'll see Destination Home and Property Management clearly printed at a table in the back. We have PATH's Deputy CEO, Jennifer Hark-Dietz. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we have Alison Riley, the Senior Director of PATH Ventures. We have a few more questions, but they've already been shuffled, so I'm going to commit to these. Okay, first one. How will you make sure that myself and my schoolmates will be safe? I imagine that's some of the individuals at the local school. So I'm gonna, Jennifer, how do you feel about answering that question?
Hi everyone. You know, I think that's a really, really good question to think about how we can keep our neighborhoods and communities safe, and that's one thing that we think of first and foremost. So our good neighbor policy, which is something that we work with each resident to understand, really talks not about just how to be a good neighbor to the tenants in the apartment, but it talks about how to be a good neighbor when they're walking out to transit, when they're walking to the store. And really, as a reminder, right, these are folks who have come onto hard times, but they are just like all of us. And we may know somebody that's experienced homeless or who is at risk or on the brink. And so what we're doing is wrapping around the supportive services that they need so that they can heal and recover and really increase their quality of life. So our security and our staff will ensure that folks know what it means to really be part of your community.
Thank you, and that question was from the Ohlone Middle School, so thank you so much for that question. Next question, application process, please explain. So I've gotten a lot of questions about application process and tenant screening, so let's try to do that all in one shot. So Jennifer, are you also able to describe the tenant screening process and the application process? Okay, we'll start with tenant screening with Jennifer, and then we'll move on to Warren for application.
Sure. So the way that I think of tenant screening, and actually I think some of you have kind of led us to really put it into 3 buckets, right? So the county actually of Santa Clara provides us the applicants, and we're able to receive them directly from their system. So basically what it means is seniors with disabilities will come to us, and we'll begin meeting with them and actually providing the supportive services before they move in. And then property management.
So once we receive the referral from the Office of Supportive Housing, we intake them into our process and we start looking at their background check, public records. We do income qualifications. Once they pass all the criteria and they're approved for tenancy, then we send them off to the Housing Authority, who also does an independent screening on their background and approves them for the project-based Section 8.
And that independent screening is actually a federal background check, so that's another bucket. So the Office of Supportive Housing, Santa Clara County, 1 bucket, federal background check, and property management. So it's actually 3 screenings.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so just a reminder, this is a subsidized apartment building, so naturally in order to receive a federal subsidy, you have to go through the standard federal background screening. Thank you. Okay, the next one is from a business owner. In accordance with the Fair Housing Act, how can you evict people who create problems due to sobriety and substance abuse transgressions when these folks were placed in our community with these problems in the first place? In accordance with, there's a part crossed out, forgive me. In accordance, people who create problems due to sobriety and substance use, how do we address those problems in the community? Jennifer's getting a lot of questions, but it's going to go back to Jennifer Hark-Dietz. Thank you.
I'm actually going to clue up. Oh, you okay, maybe? You want to go backwards? I think this is actually a good question for property management too, but really what you're seeing is that we really work closely together, because while we don't want someone to be evicted, we also don't want to see somebody disrupting the neighborhood, both inside the apartment building and outside. So we really, our house rules, which you probably saw in an FAQ, our frequently asked questions, actually state that any activity both on the property and off the property can affect tenancy. So we're really clear with folks that, they can't just behave inside but kind of cause a ruckus as soon as they walk out the door. And that's a lot different than any other apartment complex that you see, right? It's different than the neighbors I have next to me, because I know too, I have someone I can call to say, hey, what's happening? you're going to have a face and a number for the building that's going to be there day in and day out. And then we have a 4-step retention plan where we're really working with folks to try to avoid the eviction. But if it happens, we need to happen, then I'll let property management talk about how that works.
So all residents have a lease, and they all are subject to the conditions of their lease and the house rules that they agree to. And the process is that property management and services communicates regularly. And the early warning signs come up, they get referred to services immediately so they can deal with the issues before they become serious. But property management and services has to work in a team because one agency or the other may hear about problems first, and they could be affecting their tenancy. So, as they said, we want to stopgap the problems as soon as possible so that we don't end up in a termination situation where it's too late. And that's all about good communication, good feedback from the community, and frankly, holding people accountable. This is a big part of this, is residents need to understand that they need to be accountable to their actions, be good neighbors, pay their rent on time, and follow the rules. So it's a little bit of tough love, but this is something that we're all there to support for the residents.
Thank you very much. This one is a bit of a longer one, so be patient with me. Last week's presentation had a handout quoting Stanford Graduate School of Business. It says this type of housing drives up housing prices, but in low-income neighborhoods. But the conclusion of the article says in areas with higher median income and low minority shares tend to depreciate over the long run. This is not a low-income neighborhood. Why would PATH do this housing, knowing our houses will depreciate over the long run? Ray, I'm going to give this one to you.
Well, I can tell you with some degree of certainty that no houses are depreciating in this market whatsoever, as we're all seeing. The prices are going up everywhere. The reality is that we see new multifamily development, new apartment development tends to drive up prices over time. There's lots of studies. PATH has some of the studies up on the website conducted by organizations throughout the United States looking at the prices in approximate radiuses from the new housing development, and we almost always see prices going up over time in positive markets. So there's a lot of data out there to support that. The new development is good for your home values.
On the FAQ document on your table, you'll also find a study that we included that describes and answers this question. So I'm hoping you can find it in writing as well. Okay, the next question. How many PATH people live near a PATH facility? What is the annual salary of a PATH employee? Jennifer, being our deputy CEO, I'll let you handle that one.
Sure. So in terms of living near PATH facilities, so PATH is a large organization. We have about 700 staff throughout the state. So they live and work in communities just like here. What I will say about our wages is we do pay a fair market rate wage. We actually do a cost analysis market study every 2 years to ensure that we're paying a living wage, because we want to ensure that we're actually increasing the quality of life for our staff as we're increasing the quality of life for the people that we support. So, you know, it's a wide range, but we do have a variety of people in different positions throughout the community living and working together with people who were formerly homeless.
Thank you very much. If you're a member of the PATH San Jose team, outreach team, doing this work on the streets, can you raise your hand? We have some folks in the back. So they'll also be at the PATH table if you'd like to introduce yourself and meet some of our staff that work on the street right here in this neighborhood, downtown San Jose. Okay, the next card. Will sex offenders be prohibited? Kids at Ohlone, are they safe? Will it be 24/7 security? Why isn't being drug and alcohol free? Why is it not a sobriety-based building? That's 3 questions in one, but let's get through it. So will sex offenders be prohibited? I think that's easy to answer. Yes, as part of that federal screening, no sex offenders are able to receive a federal subsidy. Will the security be 24/7? So our security is built into our staffing pattern, so there's staffing at all hours. The security comes in the evenings when all of the clinicians that are serving the residents go home, and then they'll be there through the night shift. Does anyone want to answer that in greater detail?
I just, more to the point of the population, just to reiterate. So these are seniors, extremely low-income folks that have either a physical or mental disability but are still able to live independently. These are folks that are in desperate need of help and support and stability that this type of housing can provide. So it's just a reminder that a lot of the folks in there are going to be looking for help and looking for community more than anything else.
I think another comment also is that in our 13 developments across the state, we have not had a need for security, but here in San Jose, we're absolutely committed to it because we've heard that that's something that has really been desired by our community. There was one more in there, and that is the sobriety-based, the sobriety environment. Is it sobriety-based or not?
So I think one of the things that is important is that this is an apartment, it's a home, and so while we're encouraging people to use in a way that reduces their harm, they have a lease just like any one of us. So if they violate that lease and they're causing a disturbance, that would be a lease violation. But what we don't want to do is put so many restrictions on people that they stay out on the street and that they're using out on the street. We want them to come in, get the services, get the treatment that they need so that they can become sober without requiring it as a mandate. And we see that that's actually much more effective.
Thank you. Why not a 5th floor in the building? It would be nice to house more. Alison did reduce the height to four floors, so I'll let her answer that.
Yeah, usually, especially in single-family home communities, where and what we heard from folks at the last meeting is height mattered. And so while we do want to maximize density when we build, and obviously the problem is immense and we need to build as many units as we can. But we also want to be respectful to the community and the neighborhood and the fabric. And so we thought it was important to stay at 4 stories.
I promised I would not go this way. If I trip, I promise you I will be fine. Hopefully that won't happen. Okay, can we use existing government facility not being used, such as San Jose City Hall on 1st Street, not being used to house the homeless? Raul, would you like to answer that question? Or also, Ray, I'm going to let the people who have represented government here. Why not as a government?
Sure. So Old City Hall is now owned by the county of Santa Clara. And there was actually an effort, some of you may have been part of it, to try and get the county to utilize that as supportive housing. Ultimately, that effort failed, and the county moved forward with their plans to redevelop that entire area, which ultimately would mean tearing down, and you probably see that happening, right? Tearing down the old City Hall. They did kind of add something in a little bit at the end with an opportunity of maybe on the site to house some that are individuals that are formerly homeless there on the site, but nowhere near the density or the magnitude that the old building itself could have had. And so that answers that one specifically. I don't know if, okay, thanks.
That was a question specific to that, so that's very helpful. Thank you. This is from a homeowner. What will this project look like in 5 to 10 years? In other words, how will PATH sustain the project? I'm going to take that over to my PATH team, both Jennifer and Allison, whoever wants to go first.
So we're a long-term owner. We're going to be here for at least 55 years. Our funding will require that the community continue to operate as supportive housing, affordable housing for 55 years. We have the funding to make that happen is, primarily the operating is paid for through federal project-based Section 8 vouchers. And that program has been a very sustainable and ongoing program. The services are currently supported significantly by the county, but we also do, in our operating budgets, include some funding for supportive services.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say that's going to be different in 5 to 10 years is that the building will be open, and hopefully that, you know, we will have a flourishing community, because this will really be an added community benefit. There'll be a residential space that, you know, hopefully really brings life to that area that currently is unoccupied. And you'll see the same faces, because in the building, as everybody mentioned, we started Ventures in 2007, and now with the developments, the 13 we have open, right? We have case management there, we have a high level of staffing. You know, we don't go over 1 to 20. This site, I believe, we're going to aim for 1 to 10 to 1 to 12 case management ratio, which is very low. But even across the state, we don't go over 1 to 20. We really want to make sure that folks are healing and that they're thriving. And so they're going to, you know, we're going to be your neighbors, and we really feel like 5 to 10 years is actually the sweet spot, because it's, you know, we know each other. There's lots of community events that we do too, which is also exciting. So there's opportunities to kind of, we have farmers markets at a few of our spaces. So we're trying to really bring kind of community benefit to all of the regions.
Thank you, Jennifer. This question is from a resident that lives at 6th and Younger. Can you explain why there is an encampment outside the Path LA building in Los Angeles? We have many locations throughout Los Angeles, but I think we know this one area, so why don't we talk about that?
So, you know, I think that's a really great question, and it's one that I think we've really been working with the city and the county on in LA, as well as Caltrans. So for those of you that aren't familiar, we have a site that is against a freeway, which is Caltrans property. And then we have a section of it that's county property, and then a section of it that's city. Anytime those three entities are involved, as much as I love them all, it can create a lot of jurisdictional barriers. And so we actually have a neighborhood watch committee every quarter where we bring the neighborhoods together and we really look at what is happening in that community. And what we found is that, you know, with all the jurisdictional challenges, we had to bring everyone together to make a difference, so that the neighbors also felt like they had a voice. And I think that that's really something we want to bring to this neighborhood as well. We often call them a neighborhood advisory council, and what we want to do is really make sure that if these things are happening, that we're working on it, we're working to prevent it or stop it if it does happen. So we want to be the leader in that voice. It does happen, not necessarily by any of our facilities. There's actually a lot of encampments throughout the state that aren't by any communities that we operate or any other homeless service provider. It's really with the housing and homeless crisis we have. They're popping up everywhere, but we are actively going to be part of the solution with you all.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So that was our 11th question. We're in the final 4, so we have 4 more questions. This question doesn't have contact information, so I don't know the affiliation, whether it's a resident or not, but it simply says, who determines who can rent? Ray, you're close to me.
So the county has a coordinated assessment process that it goes for. In the case of this building, it'll be for seniors specifically, but they conduct an assessment that looks at key factors to determine who the most vulnerable people on the streets are. Quite frankly, it's folks that are most likely to die on the streets without some sort of intervention. The people that will be coming to this house will be over the age of 62, will have a mental or physical disability, and will have some need for long-term supportive services and care. The county makes decisions, refers them to the property, but then the property conducts screening for each tenant to make sure that they go through all the background checks and they're a suitable tenant to take occupancy.
Yeah, and in some buildings, the requirements are 62 and older. For this particular development, it will be senior housing for 55 and older. This is actually a repeat. It says, explain encampment outside Path LA. So I must have put that in the wrong pile, but I wanted to explain why I was skipping it. Next question. How many of the people wearing yes stickers live within 1 block of the proposed location? I don't know if is anyone able to answer that question? Because people came in and if they wanted a yes sticker, yeah, so a show of hands for everyone that's wearing a yes sticker to supportive housing that lives in the immediate neighborhood. So I guess that answers that question. This is another question from a resident, and we're in the final three. All of you with yes stickers, how many of you live within 1 block? So that's a repeat question. Why is District 3 opening so many of these and not other locations? I think that's a common question, so thank you for that. I'm going to have the council member answer this.
Yeah, so this is actually a great question, and in fact, I appreciate it. And I'll actually, I guess, elicit the support of a lot of you towards the end of the year here with something that I'm pushing at the city, which is to strengthen or put some teeth in our dispersion policy. But let me talk a little bit about it first. Number one, District 3 has just about half of the homeless in the entire city, concentrated all throughout our district. On any given night, we have around 80 encampments throughout the district. We are certainly ground zero for the city of San Jose, we're ground zero for the county. So equitably, we need more solutions here in District 3 than anywhere else in the city and anywhere else in the county. And we have been leading the way, and in fact, it has been neighbors like yourselves coming through to meetings like this that have been moving forward with projects all throughout District 3. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of these projects. In beginning, we are just sort of at the beginning of these efforts, but we haven't seen a lot of these projects pop up throughout the rest of the city. And I have heard that feedback from community members that have said, you know, we love to be able to be part of the solution, and we want to be, but we're starting to feel that it's inequitable in regards to how and where these projects are coming up, especially when you see on the news some of the opportunities that get pushed back or eliminated in other parts of the city. And so in February of this year, I put forward a memorandum at the city asking our housing staff to relook at our dispersion policy. And in short note, our dispersion policy talked, and it's been around for decades, talked about how we would equitably disperse affordable housing throughout the city. Unfortunately, it was more of a recommendation than a requirement. And so what I've asked for is I've asked our housing department to look at the dispersion policy, come back to the council with recommendations on how we can actually sink some teeth into that policy and see more equitable dispersion throughout the whole city. That's coming back at the end of the year. If you are staying in communication with my office, we absolutely will need your support, because I can guarantee you there are going to be community members and council members that are probably going to say, we actually wouldn't like to see more of these projects right throughout the rest of the city, and that's not fair. We are absolutely going to have many more of these solutions throughout District 3, but we absolutely need them to be more equitably dispersed, and so we are doing both.
Thank you very much, Council Member. This is the final question. How will you control homeless individuals or encampments outside, around the building, on the streets, and in our neighborhood? So Jennifer did address that a little bit when we talked about our Los Angeles location, but just to as our final question, let's just reiterate how we'll handle any kind of encampments in this particular neighborhood.
I think one of the key things about being in this neighborhood and with this community is going to be the increased staffing. So security is going to know the neighbors, they're going to know who's coming and going, the staff will know who's coming and going, and that creates an environment where, you know, we're going to be engaging those folks, we're going to know their names, we're going to move them along, we're going to let them know it's not okay to stay around there. And I know that we also have, you know, we have the city's support as well, and I know our teams here work with abatement on encampments, and we can call our hotline, but you guys will have a number you'll be able to call. I think that one of the things that's really key about supportive and affordable housing community is really additional eyes and ears together with all of you. Because, you know, our 10 to 12 staff that we'll have on site are really going to be invested in the success of each resident of the community as a whole. And that's really part of our value and part of our mission at PATH is, right, we very much believe everyone deserves a home, but at the same time it's a partnership with that tenant, and we want to increase their quality of life. So we're really working together on goals with them on a daily basis on how they can do that. So, thank you.
I wanted to thank you all so much for being here tonight. We do still have representatives from the panel that will be in the back of the room to answer your individual questions. And a few thank yous. The captain of the police department is here today. Thank you so much, Captain Santos, for being here. The captain is currently a wonderful partner of the PATH team, and it's a pleasure to work with him. Thank you also to the Buddhist Church for hosting us this evening. For the members of Destination Home that served on our panel, Robert Strongberg and Ray Bramson, Warren Reed from our property management company, and of course all of you who came here tonight. We look forward to being in ongoing contact with you. Please comment on the architecture before you leave tonight, and also if you have any comments on how you would like this development to be named, we would love some ideas as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.